Bang! Neeves Knives. I'm Jared, and today we have the full review testing of the Hogue Deka Magnacut. I did do an edge retention test and a cut test on the Magnacut, a sharpening test, all that stuff, so we're going to get into all that. I'm going to get through this first portion really fast so we can get right into the sharpening and the cut test. But I do want to get a little bit into the knife really quick before we get into that. So, super lightweight knife. Very lightweight knife. It does have the FRN handles instead of the G10. I'm not a huge fan of the FRN. It's super flimsy. I do feel it pinching me sometimes when I'm squeezing because it is so fragile. I don't know why they didn't just use the G10, but it is what it is. And that's the kind of knife it is, right? It's a super lightweight knife. Now they do make this in 20 CV as well. I'll link that one down in the description. You can see that one has G10. That's a lot more durable than this. But this one is, it's insanely light. Very, very lightweight. The pocket clip, deep carry clip, on this version. I think the other version doesn't have a deep carry clip, or maybe the new version of the 20 CV one does. But anyways, the point is that this deep carry clip works great. In and out of the pocket, fine, just fine, slips in and out, works great. Such a lightweight knife, you don't even know it's in your pocket. The action, the thumb studs are very grippy, easy to flick. It has a nice pop to it. Love the sound of it. It almost sounds like you're snapping your fingers. But the thumb studs are very easy to get to, whether it's for a reverse flick or a thumb flick. The access lock or their crossbar lock is also easy to get to. The bar protrudes out on the side, so very easy to disengage. It is on washers and it's super smooth. Also, it's pretty solid. Up and down, no play. Side to side, it's solid. However, I feel like I could just snap it in half. It's so lightweight. Just me doing this, you can see I can flex it. Now the blade. Besides the cut test, I did use it a lot. I used it for, I don't even know, I used it a lot. And, it is a dual ground WHARNCLIFFE, basically. It has a thinner grind up here and a thicker grind down here. Now, this is a little bit more robust of a grind. Now, the thing is I don't even know why they did that. Because it's basically the same thickness behind the edge. It just gets a little thinner right here, but then it goes right back to thicker up here. So there's really no point to even do the thicker grind. Yeah, it's a little bit more durable up here, but what are you doing with this knife that it really needs that much meat behind the bone on this? Why not just do this thin grind all the way across? Anyways, regardless, it worked great, so there's no problems with it. It still passes through materials. You don't even notice it, but that's what I mean. You don't even notice it, so why do it? But utility cuts and things like that, the thing's a utility cutting beast. It's insanely good. You have a lot of leverage. It's the exact blade shape you need. So if you're going to be doing pinch grips where you cut sideways or around boxes or opening things up or getting behind straps and popping straps, it's going to work great. Now, the tip of it, I did knock off some coating off the tip doing utility cuts, and I thought maybe the coating was really fragile, so then I did the exact same utility cuts on the same surface because it was on a piece of wood that it happened on. And I was thinking, man, normally I do my utility cuts if I'm going to do testing for a video. I do it on a different board. This was a specific board where the tip actually gouges into the wood. So I grabbed my Benchmade readout and I did the same thing and the same results. And this is a pretty heavy duty coating, even though this stuff does kind of come off. So if you do use it, I haven't done a cut test or anything with this one yet, but I have used it. I've done sharpening tests and stuff like that with it, but you can see same thing with the tip. So I don't think the coating's fragile in any way. I just think it was the wood that it got gouged into. Anyways, reversible deep carry clip. I should have said that off the start. I'm trying to hurry up so we can get to this other parts. T8 hardware all the way around. I love to see that. You only have to use one driver, or one bit, I should say. Even on the screws or for the clip, which is awesome. Love to see that. Now, Yeah, I'd like to see. I wish the thumb studs were removable with a T8 or a T6. That would be awesome. But regardless, not that big of a deal. But anyways, so as a day-to-day user, it was great. Super lightweight. I mean, you don't even know you have a knife, you know, in your pocket until you take it out. Like I said, very lightweight, and, you know, I feel the scales flexing, so I didn't like that. I don't really like how lightweight it is, but it's fine. It works great as a knife, and if you're wanting extra lightweight knife, this is amazing. So, as a functioning EDC, amazing. Now, the sharpening, right? Let's get into sharpening really quick. I will talk at the end over my overall thoughts about the sharpening, the cut test, and how I think everything went. Okay, so with this type of blade shape, we're going to have to do it similar to a tanto. We have to sharpen each portion at a time. So we can still do the whole blade, but we're going to have to do each section at a time. So I'm using the DMD tri-way system, starting off with 150 grit. If these creases wind up giving me some issues, I got some other plates I can use instead. But so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use my finger trick in this case, because I do want to put the same angle on both sides, and I want to keep it very consistent. So I'm going to see if I can hold it at this exact point. So I'm actually going to mark this point right now. And normally I wouldn't do my finger trick, but I do want this to be as consistent as possible since it is going to be going through an edge retention test. So I have my mark on my finger. That's my angle. I matched it up to my pointer finger, so it's the same angle on here as when I'm coming back. And I'm going to start with this first section. I'm going to mostly do forward and back motions, or just push motions, but I will come off the stone here and there. But what I do not want to do is move my elbow up and down. I don't want to sit here and change angles. Sorry, it wasn't focused. But I don't want to go off the stone and then lift and then get this side. Now, technically I could. I could go just like this, get off the stone, raise up, and then finish off. I could do that, but I don't know. Let me try it out really quick. I'm going to try it out on a few passes and see how it works. Off. These little ridges are giving me an issue. I might have to switch plates really quick. I could do it though. Let me just testing this out really quick. Yeah, let me I'm gonna switch to my other. You know what, actually this has a 325 on it. I can start with this. Let's see how this works. Now I'm gonna lift, get the end. That actually doesn't look bad. I actually think I could do it like that. Now, I would recommend, if you're not really good at holding angles, just to do each side individually, because you can easily mess up doing this way. I'm making sure as soon as I come off the stone, right there, right when it hits that crease, I am raising. I'm just lifting my elbow up a 1/4 inch, you know, just a little tiny bit, and then finishing it off. It's working pretty good, but my angle is not as good as I'd like at the tip, so I'm going to compensate for that by, when I come off the stone right here, I'm going to lift my wrist and take my, lift my elbow and then take my wrist and just barely kink it back a little bit to make sure I get the back of the bevel. It's a very subtle movement, and there it is, right there. Got it. My new edge was not hitting the back of the bevel the way I would like, especially with a lower angle than what's on it. But let's take a quick look at just the beginning of it. You can see it's looking really good, and this is just the start, so that's what I'm gonna do. And if I notice any real inconsistency, which I don't think I will, I think it looks good. You know, this isn't really a point, so it's not that big of a deal to transition. Now, if this was an actual acute point, I would not do it this way because I would need to marry the two together to equal a point. Since that's not the case here, we're just going to ride it out. Alright. I'm just doing a reverse pass, knocking my burr off really quick. Great. This angle right here, I noticed even from the factory, the grind is a little thinner right here than it is on this side. You could clearly see that from the factory, but I'll try to get it to blend as much as possible. Back of the bevel needs to get hit, or the back of the heel of the blade near the choil. There we go. Got it. Need to work a little bit longer though to match. You can see on this side I need to still hit the heel just a little bit, so I'm going to continue working on it until it's consistent, and then we will move to the next stone. Okay, let's talk about how the steel feels really quick on the stone. What I'm feeling off the bat. And this is just all honesty, I have no idea how the cut test is going to go. None of that stuff. It doesn't feel very hard. Now, I don't feel like it feels bad, but you know the difference between like a super hard like HRC, like you can really feel it skating across the diamonds. Like it almost feels like you're sharpening glass to some extent. It doesn't have that feeling. So what does that say? You know, not much. It doesn't say much. It doesn't mean the heat treat's bad. Doesn't mean anything. It means, you know, it's obviously not a super hard HRC, but that doesn't mean it's going to do bad in the cut test or anything like that. However, you know, it is a sign that the HRC isn't like super hard. Now, like when I did the mule, the Spyderco mule, it had that feeling. It did have that feeling. It skated across the diamonds. It felt really hard. I'm not getting that with this. But like I said, I'm not saying it's bad, so don't take it that way whatsoever. We'll see how, you know, the deburring process and everything goes when it comes time. So I'm going to try to move up in grit to a pretty high grit. I want to see how it holds bite. That's one thing I want to do. And I am going to wind up putting a couple edges on this, so we'll see which one I decide to do the cut test with. This is a 1200 grit diamond plate. There's one little spot on the heel right here that's kind of difficult to hit for some reason. Maybe I'll just have to get it out in the second sharpening. I'm not going to make a big deal of it. Alright, so I moved over to a VENEV diamond resin bonded stone because, like I said, I do want to see how it polishes up. And this is technically a coarser stone than what I came off of, but just to make sure I get all my scratch pattern out for my next stone, I'm gonna hit a couple passes on this thing, go over to the next one. I do kind of feel like I'm getting into a little bit better steel. I kind of noticed it on the end of the last stone. I started kind of noticing that it had that feeling. I can't tell if it's true or if I was just adjusting. But it did kind of, like, it wasn't like very obvious, but it's kind of feeling like I'm kind of getting into a little bit harder steel. I do have a whole another sharp, I am going to put a couple edges on it, so this is just one. Looking good though, looking real good. All right, so excuse me. So after this stone, that's where it's really going to start telling us how this particular knife, particular steel, particular heat treat is going to do with a polish. So far it feels like it's going to do just fine, but we'll see. But it's after this stone where either they make it or break it. Usually this stone can be a pretty good indicator to how it's going to go. But not always. And, you know, just because it takes a good polish doesn't mean it'll hold a good polish. Those are two different things. You know, it has to be able to take and hold. I'll tell you what, that Magnacut I did on the Spyderco Mule, man, that stuff, you know, and, you know, I could speak on other Magnacut that was custom heat treated, but, you know, specifically from a production company, you know, Spyderco's, man, that stuff was so good. It was so good. Not only did it take the polish extremely well, but damn it, it held it like a champ. Now, the tactile rock wall, they did a good job too. Now, it was not as good as Spyderco's, you know, and I made that very clear in the video I did between them, but it was still damn good. Damn good. Just, you know, they just need to raise their HRC a little bit, and I think they would be right there. So I just want to say really quick that the edge that I put on the knife for the final cut test was basically this exact same edge, 17 degrees per side, mirror polished to about 3500 grit or the F800 VENEV stone. So I'm actually using a small strop instead of a big one because I can really see and feel the angle change a little bit better. It was a relatively easy edge. Yeah, it came out really good. It was a very easy edge to sharpen. I'm going to check the transition. Perfect. Perfectly clean. It's very, very sharp. So let's see how it goes. So here is the edge, a nice mirror polished edge of I used the F800 as the last stone, which is about 3500 grit. I didn't go with the last one because, which would have been around 5000 grit, because I figured this was plenty good. 17 degrees per side, looks beautiful, and it is extremely, extremely sharp. Like, it did come out really good. Alright, so first off, there are some variables with my test. I did not use the exact same cardboard. I did go through the cardboard. It was used cardboard. I did go through it. I cleaned it up. I tried to get the most similar pieces as possible, but there were some different pieces, maybe a little bit of tape here and there. 99% of anything that was on it, I did remove and tried to get the cleanest stuff. But it is what it is. So there are some variables with this test. And no, I did not tape off the blade. I only used the front portion of the blade, and I tried to avoid the back end towards the choil as much as possible. If it wound up hitting it some, you know, here and there, maybe. But, you know, the overwhelming majority of the test was done in the front portion of the knife, and I made sure of that. And I wanted to do that so that when I checked my edge, I could go into the paper with a nice sharp edge and then lead to the dull area so that I could really feel and see the difference between a clean edge and the edge that's showing, you know, wear. Now, like I said, you know, but yes, there are some variables with this test, so you can't compare them to Outpost 76's tests or Cedric Ganeda's or anything like that. And shout out to those guys. They do amazing tests, amazing tests that are very controlled, much better than I'm doing. So shout out to those guys. Now let's get into the results. So the results are the fine edge. Now let me be clear, the fine edge went dull, or went dead before this number, but at 246 feet is when I checked it, and there was no more fine edge left. I checked it right around like 200, and I think it was like 210 feet, something like that, and it was still holding, but you know, it's between there and 246 is where it fell off. No more fine edge. The total number of feet was 516 feet. So the fine edge was somewhere before 246 feet, and the total feet was 516 feet. Now, if you wanted to, because I did have a couple pieces of cardboard that were double walled. They were not single walled. If you wanted to add that, it would be 641 feet if you wanted to add that double. I'm not going to. I'm going to say it was 516 because, to be honest, the double-walled cardboard kind of cut even easier than the single-walled, at least with this cardboard. And I think this test was pretty good. I think the results were great. Now, I will say this. I do, you know, even though the fine edge was cutting up to, you know, around 246 feet, it didn't have a lot of bite. I do think that the fine edge could have felt like it had more bite to it than it did. You know, I deal with a lot of fine edges that, you know, and this is supposed to be comparable to 4V. My 4V definitely, you know, has more bite to it. Even off the stone, you know, yes, it had a lot of bite. Yes, it was great, but not as good as I think it could be. Now, that could be, you know, the HRC, something like that. I don't know, but even the mule that I tested had a significant more amount of bite than this. Now, I didn't do a controlled test on the mule, but I think still the test results are great. Like I said, you can't compare them to other people's test results because I do have some variables, but you'd think with the variables there would be, you know, maybe even less cardboard. I think this is a phenomenal result. So I do think, you know, from the stone to the cut test, I think the heat treat's good. I just think the HRC can be raised up a little bit, maybe possibly. Other than that, though, I think the test went great. Like I said, though, I do think that the fine edge, even though it's shaving hair, I think it just, you know, it didn't have that level of bite that I expect from a polished edge. Whether or not it could have done better or worse with a medium grit edge, I don't know. But here is the final cut right here where the edge falls off, and it was still sharp. It was still, you know, somewhat cutting paper, but it was snagging, it was holding up. So that's where I cut it off. You could tell the edge was going dead. And here on this paper, it completely dies. As soon as it gets to that section of the edge, you see it just fall. So you see the back side of the edge, the parts that's not hit from the cardboard. Then as soon as it gets to the edge that was tested with the cardboard, it falls off. But here, I'm going to strop it a couple times really quick, and then we're going to see how fast it comes back. I only did a few passes on the strop per side, and, you know, I think, it responded okay to the strop. You know, it could respond a little bit better, but, you know, it still responded, and the edge did come back to some extent. It could have came back a little bit better, but it did come back. Right back. So, all in all, I think the results were really, really good. Now, I do think that it could be a little harder. You know, on the stone, sharpened up really good. It did take a good fine edge, took a good polished edge. It did have good bite. Not as much bite as, you know, I think it could have had, right? Like my 4V gets a lot more bite than this. The Magnacut that I tested on the mule, which I do think that Magnacut that I tested on the mule was at the higher range of their HRC. I think it was a great example. I have no way to prove that, but I do think that, you know, just the way it felt on the stone compared to this one, you know, it didn't feel as hard as that. So I think the heat treat was done pretty well. You know, I was very happy with the results. It just, you know, I just think that it could feel a little bit harder. But, you know, I mean, the results are in the pudding. I mean, it did get good test results. Now, my test was, you know, a lot different than other people's. There were a lot more variables and everything else. But even considering all the variables, this was a great result. You would think the variables would make the test, you know, the numbers even less. But, you know, the numbers were really good. However, though, there was quite a few variables. Now, or should I say, you know, the heat treat's done very well. It did strop back pretty fast, pretty well, pretty easily. You know, the cut test was good. The fine edge holding, you know, felt, you know, pretty damn good. You know, I think I was pretty happy with it. I just don't think that it has that high level of bite, even though it's incredibly sharp. And most people would probably say, you know, this was a damn good polished edge. But I also know some of my other polished edges from other steels and the amount of bite they get and how sticky they are. But it was still very sticky, though, you know. So do I think it could take a good polished edge? Yes. Do I think it could take and hold a good polished edge? Yes. I just think that it's not going to be as sticky as, you know, you could possibly get if the HRC was a little bit higher or if it was on another steel. But yeah, I think it was a great test. I think it went well. I'll tell you what, it did get uncomfortable though, you know, and it was mostly not even this hand. It was this hand holding the cardboard. You know, some of the edges were, you know, messed up and, you know, made it a little more difficult. And it wasn't even the knife having trouble getting in. It was the cardboard itself. It wouldn't have mattered what knife it was. It would have had trouble going in. But yeah, you guys probably didn't see it because it was fast forwarded, but there were times I was struggling trying to get it to bite in on some of the pieces just because they were riffled and folded. But anyways, it went really well. And, you know, all in all, considering how much cutting I did, you know, the knife was fine. It held up good. You know, the ergos weren't too bad. I spoke about it in the beginning, you know, the pinching and stuff that does happen. So it's not going to be something for hard use. But if you're wanting something that holds an edge really well, takes an edge really well, and does do a significant amount of cutting before it needs to be stropped back, I mean, they did a pretty good job on it. On this example, this specific one, I can't speak for any of the other ones. I did hear about some variables. I did hear some people were saying it was soft and that they weren't happy with it. Whether or not it was a burnt edge or maybe their example, I don't know. This one wasn't too bad. I was actually pretty happy with it. And I want to say this, I do think it's very comparable to tactiles. I think these two are very, very comparable. The heat treat feels good. This in the same breath could be harder. Great heat treat. Sharpened up good, deburred really good. Same thing with this. Sharpened up really good, deburred really good. Even this one does hold a little tiny bit more bite than this one, but they're very, very comparable. They're very similar. So, but this one, by their, what they say their HRC is at, it just shows that it could be a little bit higher. And through my test before I ever knew what they were running it at, I said that this didn't feel as good as the Mule, which was running it at a more optimal range or a higher HRC for the steel. So especially for these applications, being EDC knives, and not, anyways. I think they're both done well, but I think these two are very, very similar, at least these particular two applications. But anyways, there you guys go. What can I say? The test speaks for itself, even though it was a little inconsistent or, had some variables. I love you guys. Thank you guys for watching. Erica, thank you for letting me borrow this and doing the test. Get it back to you soon. Peace.